Welcome to Rocket Ship, the home of epic React Native content. I'm Simon Grimm, creator of Galaxies.dev, and in today's episode, we're gonna have to talk about a lot of interesting topics, from a new React Native version to a little fight with Apple and the dominance of React Native compared to Flutter, and I also got some personal updates on what's going on behind the scenes. So let's dive straight into our React Native radar. So React Native 0.80 was released this week. There's no dramatic change, but actually some pretty cool improvements that you might be able to check out already. So with React Native, let's just call it 80, you have access to the version 19.1 of React. That version comes also with this cool new feature of owner stack that we talked about a couple of weeks or a month already ago, which basically makes it a whole lot easier to debug your React Native application. Evan Bacon showcased a couple of things about that. On top of that, this release now also includes the first steps towards this stable JavaScript API that we talked about in the last episode. So check that out. The whole story about the frozen legacy architecture and the stable TypeScript API is in that episode where we also talked about the app.js. Now they begin by deprecating deep imports. Again, I have never used actually deep imports in React Native. I don't know. You shouldn't do this. It's now deprecated. You get warnings about the legacy architecture, which will nudge you towards upgrading and migrating to the new architecture, which is definitely a smart move, as they're freezing the legacy architecture and won't continue to invest time into it. Beyond that, what I just read is that they also improved or decreased actually the speed and made the iOS builds faster by using pre-built dependencies. I have no idea what's going on under the hood here, but they claim to make iOS builds roughly 12% faster with pre-built. That's pretty cool, and I plan to do more of that. So I'm definitely down to this, because the first pre-build with Expo for your iOS app, it always takes a couple of minutes. It could really be a bit faster. You can already use this right now with a command when installing your pods. And for Expo, you would have to adapt this a bit, but you can make it work as well. Beyond that, some smaller changes: Android smaller APK sizes, a new app screen design if you're using the community CLI. But if you're listening, I guess most people will use Expo anyway. And in terms of breaking changes, nothing really critical for most people. So you might ask yourself, can I use this with Expo right now? And that's actually a good question. And the answer is, you kinda can. Because Expo just released SDK 53, they're of course not instantly shipping a new SDK just for this version. Expo is planning to support actually the next version, so 81, with SDK 54. And Expo SDK 54 will ship in late summer. That means from today until late summer, we have to live with Expo SDK 53, but you can use a canary version of the Expo SDK in your application if you want to. This is like a snapshot of their current development state, and with that you could use React Native 0.80 as well as React 19.1. Be aware that this is, well, somewhat like, it's the canary channel. You have to be careful with that. You should be aware that it is not stable, may contain bugs, it may have breaking changes, it should only be used for testing and evaluation and all sorts of that. And it will not support Expo Go. So if you want the latest feature of Expo of React Native 80, then give it a shot. Otherwise, wait until late summer for SDK 54. Alright, beyond that, some other news. I found this cool post on Reddit. I made a free GitHub Actions workflow that replaces Expo EAS builds. And there are two cool things about this. Number one is that this is actually pretty cool. I know that some folks have reported EAS is too expensive for them. I actually use EAS mostly for free with the free builds, and that has worked well for me because I don't really make releases every day. I do it like probably every 2 or 3 weeks, and then I can use EAS, and I'm totally fine. This is not time critical. For some folks, EAS is too expensive, and this post explains how it works. You can visit this at expobuilder.app, and it's pretty cool. Like, you create your own workflow, you create a custom file, you host it with GitHub Actions, and probably it's using something like Fastlane under the hood. It's really interesting, and that someone just made this for free is really, really cool. That is the first thing. The second interesting thing is that you might be thinking Expo is really pissed about this, and it's like, wow, they're taking away our business, and this is so bad. But this once again shows that Expo is a great community, a great company, and has integrity. So John Sam from the Expo team replied to this because it was posted under our Expo, so it was visible to them. And John said, I'm just not reading everything, but we love it when people automate their builds and other tasks. It's really important to us that you don't have to use our services, no login, and that you can use other services like GitHub Actions. He then explains a couple of things about EAS and why it's good, or maybe clarifies something. And then in the end, he again says, with that, just want to reiterate that the -- local build flag and running things on GitHub Actions is very reasonable and makes sense for a lot of people. Configuring everything in GitHub Actions can be tricky, so this tool seems like a great way to fast forward GitHub Action creation. Nice work. So essentially, they're saying, great, competition is great, you did a great job in open sourcing, because they still know that enterprise companies will probably not use this and not set this up and instead go for the EAS build services. So definitely shout out to the creator here. His name is ContentBerry2848 for creating and open sourcing this, but also to Expo Company and John Sam for replying in probably the best possible way to something like this. Really, I love it. All right. Beyond that, there are two cool posts on the Expo blog that I definitely recommend. The first one is about Neon City. So I reviewed this app from Day on Moon probably a year ago in my YouTube series app review. He has built this little game where you can like slide your finger and then you have to like, it's a cool thing. You can install it both App Store and Google Play Store. In that post, he dives into how he built that game, the different gestures, how he's using reanimated under the hood, how he's using sprites. So if you want some let's say a spark of imagination, what's possible, and maybe you're interested in building games with React Native, then definitely read this post. It's called Building Neon City, a fast-paced mobile game made with React Native, Reanimated, and Expo. And there's also a second post on the Expo blog that caught my eye. What if use state was your backend? This one is interesting because it's from a company called Instant, and I talked to Instant also probably a year ago. They kind of market themselves as, Instant is a modern Firebase. And that line got me. That's what got me to Supabase in the first place. Like, we are the open source Firebase alternative, and they still got me. But Instant is a modern version of Firebase, and I think that's pretty cool. They bring this instant aspect that you've like probably loved about Firebase when you used it the first time to the modern times with great solutions in React. The post dives into how you can use it. I'm not exactly sure how they handle the synchronization. So if we're talking about like offline first things, I don't know exactly how this works with Instant. Last year they were at a very early stage. So I'm really happy to see them now getting coverage on the Expo blog already. The post is actually really in-depth. It's a long post with a lot of code in there. So if you're like having some time during the weekend or want to try out a new technology that might become something great, check out Instant. It's backed by Y Combinator, and I think it's going to be a really great tool in the future. And if you want to see a tutorial or something about this, let me know in the comments or send me a DM on X. I'm definitely down to diving into this because I love working with new technology. Now, with all of that being said, just one last release. It is not a final release, but it's the golden RC for React Native Uni Styles. React Native Uni Styles is a styling alternative. I've used it before in version 2. Version 3 is now almost ready. Uni Styles is cool in that it's pretty much just a replacement of Style Sheet, and then it gives you superpowers on top of that. We've talked probably about this before and might do it again in the future. Jacek was also part of the Rocket Ship podcast at a very early episode. Maybe we're going to bring him back to talk about what has changed. It has really a crazy good performance. It is pretty much exactly like Style Sheet. Maybe it's even faster by now because they're using like JSI and C++ bindings under the hood. So if you're looking out for this, check it out. It should just be a couple of weeks until the final release, version 3 of Uni Styles is out. Alright, this week I also have a little blog about technology I'm testing. So for my next clone application, I'm working with a software called Vapi or Vapi, I don't know how you would pronounce it. Basically, they are voice agents for developers. They reached out to me and we wanted to collaborate because I used it and it works so incredible well. When the tutorial comes out, you're gonna see everything, how it works. I can just give you a glimpse of what you can do already. Like, you can specify your AI assistants or agents inside of Vapi. You can give them like, what should they say? You can use variables. You can give them a general prompt. You can upload files so they have access to like your items or user database. You can select different voices and you can then like instantly call them from the browser to test things out. And what's even more exciting is they have workflows. And in these workflows, you can define different steps. For example, for this Amazon clone, made a workflow, which is like support. They ask, how can I help you? And if the user needs help with an order, the conversation will try to query the user for the order ID. They will extract it. Then you can combine this with a tool call. The tool calls your backend. Then it gets back JSON data. And the assistant is able to pretty much just read that JSON data and get the information about like the order status or the items included. There's many more you can do, like at some point switching to a real customer support. So if the AI agent isn't able to help, you can forward this to a real phone number. It is an exciting service. It is challenging to implement with React Native with their SDK. It has some dependencies that still rely on the old architecture. I hope they will update it. But if you're looking for something like this, check out Vapi, pretty cool. And the second thing I'm currently testing in terms of technology is actually the React Native bottom sheet from Gorhom. I didn't think that Gorhom Bottom Sheet would make an appearance in my videos again, because with Expo, with Form Sheet, and how you can style this, I thought, the times are over. But I had the need for something different, something that was like behind a tab bar and that you could just pull up and down. You might know this from the Amazon app. Like when you're on an article, there is this little thing down there that you can pull up. And I wasn't able to implement that with Expo Router and the Form Sheet. Maybe I was dumb, I don't know. But React Native Bottom Sheet, Gorhom left a comment on X, said, hey, this is exactly possible with Bottom Sheet. I think it's called Persistent Bottom Sheet or something. And I implemented it, and I gotta say, React Native Bottom Sheet Gorhom is still pretty great. Version 5 of it is out. It is just really nice to work with. It has become a lot easier, I think, at least, or I understood better how to work with it. But shout outs once again to Gorhom. If you're in need for a good bottom sheet, this is still a rock solid solution. Like every week, I also want to share some quick tiny wins I had this week. So last week, I'm training for a triathlon, and last week I did an actual triathlon for the first time. It was only a test. I did it here locally, but I did all the distances. So a 500-meter swim, 20 kilometers bike, and 5 kilometers run. That's actually a shorter distance than the Olympic distance, but that's what I'm gonna do next Sunday as well. And I finished it under 120, which is my overall goal. I still hope to get to 115, but it depends on the form on the race day. But I made it, I felt good, I did all the transitions, and I had a lot of fun doing it, so I feel prepared for the next race. Also, afterwards, I noticed that I actually swam for about 750 meters instead of 500 because my watch was kind of off, so I have a hope that I will do better on race day. And to improve our recovery, we're building a little fitness area or recovery wellness area outside, and we now finally have a pretty much cold plunge out there. It's called a bit differently, but we have it hooked up to something called Poolican, I don't know, which cools it down. It's normally used for like warming up your pool, but it can also cool it down. So we're cooling the water down to about 10 degrees. Initially, it even cooled it down to like 5 degrees Celsius, by the way. But that was a bit like too cold. So we're now going for 10. And I love it. We did this before, but You know, when the temperature outside is getting warmer and you have no thing to cool your plunge and you just have the water, it goes to like 15, 16 and then there's no effect. So now we have this. I'm going into this every day. I love it. I can highly recommend it. It is a bit hard, but once you get used to it, the benefits are really great. Now to some built-in public updates and behind the scenes. My next clone is almost ready. It is an Amazon application clone. Not exactly Amazon, but I tried to replicate most of the UI. If you watch this on YouTube, you can see some preview images from the repository, and there will actually be a lot included, from tab bar changing animation to some reanimated stuff going on. We have passkeys, we have actually 3D view with filament, we have Vapi for voice agents. I'm using Stripe integration to actually make a payment. So there's a lot going on in this one, and I'm really excited to ship this very soon. Beyond that, honestly, this whole triathlon thing is just taking up so much of my mental space. I'm not really getting to anything. So next Sunday is the race. I'm getting more excited every day, but I also feel good. The problem is really that it kind of dominates your thoughts if you have this big thing going on. Like normally when I go out for a walk, I'm alone, or I have 10 minutes in the afternoon, evening, morning, whenever, I usually think about like, what's a cool tutorial idea? What can I add to Galaxies? What's a topic for a podcast? What could my next app be? But right now, all these like little in-between thoughts are filled with, what should be my nutrition on race day? Is my bike perfectly set up? Okay, I'm gonna do this. My swimming could be better. I don't want to fall off. Am I drinking enough? Like everything is just dominated by this, and I'm really happy and glad once the race is finished that I can just take my mind off this topic, at least for a couple of months until I run a marathon in September. But really, it just takes a lot of mind space. But beyond that, I still have the thought of doing a new mission in late summer or fall this year. So, you know, in January, I launched the Zero to Hero mission on Galaxies, which helps people to go from zero to hero, guess what, and learn React Native and ship your first app. I kind of want to continue the journey and pick up the people that have gone through this by giving them a way to build a rock-solid application. My plan currently is to build something around Supabase and just include a host of great features, which might mean push notifications, AI support, maybe something like voice agents, some real functionality in that application, and going the whole way from a basic idea to a shipped application with Supabase. This is my broad vision. I still have it in the back of my mind. I probably would have outlined it a bit more if my thoughts weren't like crowded with all this like triathlon stuff. So let me know if you have any thoughts about this. I'm really excited to do this, and I really plan to also get back more into app development, because in the beginning of this year, my plan was to ship more apps. I shipped a couple of apps in the first quarter, and then I dropped off because I'm doing like a lot of sports and other topics came in during this quarter. I really hope to get back into building apps, sharing my experience with building apps later in summer. We'll be traveling a lot. That's also the reason why I'm now dropping my video frequency on YouTube on my main channel to bi-weekly. So for the last years, I've always released a weekly video, but it has become a bit too much. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Now I'm finally dropping the frequency. I can't keep it up right now. With all the vacation time, with all the traveling in July coming up, it's just better to go for a bi-weekly schedule and just give you good quality instead of doing a crappy video every week. So that's what's going on behind the scenes. I hope you enjoyed this update. And now let's finish today's episode with a quick talk about some trending topics. So Apple had this keynote for the WWDC and also the state of platforms something. And there were some really interesting outcomes from this. One is something that Jamin Holmgren picked up. Apple today took a shot at React Native and other cross-platform frameworks, and he has thoughts. He quotes what Apple said. Some other frameworks promise the ability to write code once for Android and iOS, and that may sound good, but by the time you've written custom code to adapt each platform's conventions, connected to hardware with platform-specific APIs, implemented accessibility, and then filled in functionality gaps by adding additional logic and relying on a host of plugins, you've likely written a lot more code than you'd planned on. And you are still left with an app that could be slower, look out of place, and can't directly take advantage of features like live activities and widgets. Apple's native frameworks are uncompromisingly focused on helping you build the best apps. And this is a clear shot, of course, at things like React Native or Flutter. But many things in there are just not true. Just like we had this video the other day that React Native isn't popular and had a lot of elements that are not true, there's a lot in here that's not true. And Jamin brings up some really great points. He clarifies some things, especially based on his experience with Infinite Red and how they work, how they see React Native at different companies. Like all these things, you can have different opinions about them. And I like that also where is the quote from James IE from Expo actually replied, on a related note, React Native versus native does not stand on a very meaningful premise. React Native uses native code to create native user interfaces using the platform's native capabilities. It is native. So this also ties in nicely to the other topics I wanted to discuss, but pretty much Apple is saying things that are not really that true. Maybe it was more meant like a general thing or to scare people, to nudge them to use Swift and build for the platform, but you can get pretty much everything with React Native because React Native essentially is native. And this also came through when iOS 26 with Liquid Glass UI was announced, and Evan Bacon was basically able to implement this in the React Native app like 2 hours after the announcement, because React Native uses the native platform. If you use the, for example, native bottom tabs package, you will have these new glass effect bottom tabs. And so it's the same for other input components from like the Expo UI package. It renders the native controls, and therefore you will instantly get access to this UI, unless you, of course, make some crazy styling that works cross-platform. But if you're using the platform primitives, you're in a great place with React Native to adopt all these things on day one. And you also get access to the underlying features, even if I think they also dropped some AI stuff, which of course won't work in the EU, so I didn't use it yet. But I think Cedric made an Expo module, which was like 10 lines of code, and you could access the Swift functionality instantly from React Native. So this whole Apple versus React Native thing, it's kind of challenging. Again, read Jamin's post. I think he clarified some of the issues in a really great way. And just a final word on our good friends from Flutter. There was a post, there were a lot of posts on X about Flutter and how it's doomed, but there was also one post on Reddit. Will customers demand liquid glass on Apple devices? And Flutter currently with the engine is pretty much not possible to do this. If you don't know this, Flutter basically renders your whole elements in a canvas pixel by pixel. So they're in a pixel perfect way drawing the interfaces. And that has worked okay, but with liquid glass, it's pretty much impossible to do this. Also, the Google team would have to implement a whole new, what they currently call Cupertino UI. And it looks like they're not really interested in doing this. I think I found a quote also somewhere from the Flutter team on GitHub that they have no plans to adopt this. So that pretty much means if you're building with Flutter for the foreseeable future, you won't be able to build an iOS application that uses the latest UI interface paradigm. And that can be okay if you're like BMW and you have this specific brand with the specific buttons and specific colors, or you're building a game and you don't want to rely on this. But if you're building a consumer-faced technology and consumers get used on iOS to this interface, and then suddenly your application, which is built with Flutter, looks like iOS 20 or something, users will say something like, this doesn't feel like an iOS application, and that is a problem that Flutter will have in the very near future, and they will be pretty much doomed. I don't know how they will get out of this. I don't know how they will market this. Maybe they have to just double down on this concept of our UI looks the same on every platform and like sell this, but they can definitely not sell a platform native UI for Android and iOS anymore in the future. So good luck, Flutter. I'm glad I'm with React Native for the moment. I don't know if Lynx will someday replace this, but for the moment, I feel good. That's it for today. Interesting news related to React Native 80, Expo versions, behind the scenes, and the new iOS paradigm. I will have my triathlon in a couple of days, so wish me luck on Sunday, and I will report hopefully back next week how it goes. Wish me luck, and I will catch you in the next episode. So until then, happy coding, Simon. Thanks for joining today's episode. My goal is to share interesting stories and insights into the world of React Native development. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe to the show on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify. And on Spotify and Apple, you can leave up to a 5-star review. Because podcasts, and especially niche podcasts like this, are hard to find, subscribing and leaving a review does help me a lot. On top of that, check out my React Native courses on Galaxies.dev that cover a variety of topics from getting started to building and publishing your mobile app. Finally, you can share today's episode with a friend or colleague who would enjoy the topic of the show. If you have any questions or ideas for future episodes, find me on X or leave a comment on YouTube. And last but not least, thank you for listening and happy coding, Simon.